Good morning to everyone. In this lecture EC8691 microprocessor microcontroller, third year CSC department. In previous classes lecture videos, we have to study the memory interfacing. Now in this session, the input output interfacing. The input and output interfacing is needed to transfer the data between the external circuit to the microprocessor and the microprocessor to external circuit. Now the input devices are give information to the processor and output devices are display the information from the processor. So what are the example of input and output devices can be interfaced of 8086 in two methods. Number one, memory mapped input output method. Number two, input and output mapped input output. So the example of the input devices is such as a keyboard, thumb wheel switches, DIP switches, and the example of output devices is a LED and LCD. Now we see the interfacing input port and output port. The steps in the interfacing an in-out devices, the following steps are performed to interface a general input and output device with a CPU. Number one, connect the data buses of the processor system with the data bus of the input and output port. Number two, derive the device address pulses by decoding the record address of the device, and it is used as a chip select of the device. Number three, it is used as a suitable control signal. Therefore, input and output read signal and or input and output write signal to carry the output device operations. Therefore, connect input and output read and read input of the device if the input device. Otherwise, connect the input and output write of the input device. In some cases, the read and write control signals are combined with the device address pulse to generate the device select pulses. Now, what are the advantages of memory mapped input and output and input and output mapped input output? First one, the advantages of memory mapped input and output is many CPU registers can exchange the data with the input output device. The port addresses are 16-bit wide, thereby it provide more input and output port. And the second one is the port address are 16-bit, that is a wide 16-bit, therefore it provide more input and output port. Number three, the same powerful memory type instruction are used to access the input output device. Number four, the speed is high. Number five, the reduction in the CPU control lines. Now, similarly, what are the disadvantages of memory mapped input and output devices? Number one, the number of input and output port connected is limited by number of available memory locations. Number two, the length of the program is increased. Number three, the wide port address. We have to see the wide port address. The interface hardware is also increased. Now we are going to the advantages of input and output memory mapped input output. Number one, first one is a program is simple. Second one, the input and output instructions is isolate the memory and the input output, so that memory address is not affected by the input and output, and the type of instruction are usually less than the memory type instruction used in memory mapped input output, and the complexity of the device address decoded depends upon the length of the device address field. Now the disadvantages of input and output memory mapped system, it is less powerful and less flexible than memory mapped. And the second one is it is two additional control lines are needed for issuing input and output read operation and input output write operations. Thank you for watching this video.